Up Garage Racer. We continue our series on engines. Today, we are reviewing an unusual engine, not a regular one, but a sporty type, which is installed in the M3 and M4. This is the S55 engine. These cars, if they are salvaged from the US, are relatively affordable, priced around $45,000 to $50,000. Moreover, the S55 engine is renowned for its reliability, making it quite popular in Ukraine. You'll encounter them more frequently than the previous S65 V8 engines used in the older E90 and E92 models. Therefore, today's review is about this engine. One can complain for a long time that this engine evolved from the regular civilian N55 motor, that it no longer revs as high, that the sound is different, that it's just a turbocharged inline-six, but we won't delve into that. Instead, we'll tell you about its characteristics and its differences compared to the N55. This S55 engine is inferior to the S65 only in terms of its design. It doesn't rev as high and has a different sound since it's not a V8. However, in other aspects, it is better. The use of a turbocharger on the 3-liter gasoline engine allowed for earlier torque delivery, plus the torque is greater than that of the naturally aspirated V8. Here the torque is 550, whereas there it is 400 Newton meters, and it was possible to achieve 10 more horsepower, which is available earlier. Also, what nobody cares about are the reduced carbon dioxide emissions compared to the naturally aspirated V8. So, about the S55's design. The S55 consists of 75% of the same parts as the N55, but 25% of the parts were developed separately for it, which give it such high performance figures. So, let's start with the block. The block here, unlike the N55, is a closed deck. In the N55, it is an open deck, but here it is closed. This allows it to withstand greater loads and therefore deliver high power. For example, at stage 3, with the use of more efficient turbochargers, it can easily achieve around 800 horsepower. That is, 790, 780, 800, something like that. In other words, the closed deck block can withstand greater loads. The oil supply system has been improved compared to the N55 because this engine is used on the track under harsh operating conditions, and it always needs to supply very hot oil at high pressure to prevent pressure drops and avoid any wear on the bearings. This engine uses a forged crankshaft and lightweight pistons made of aluminum alloy. According to BMW, this makes the engine more rev-happy. There is a known issue with the lower part of this engine. There is a timing chain sprocket that slips on the crankshaft hub, so the entire assembly is replaced with a single-piece construction where the crankshaft hub and sprocket are one unit, eliminating the slipping problem. The cylinder head has been modified, so you can't simply swap it with one from the N55. Since M-series cars from the US often come with front-end damage, their lower oil coolers are usually damaged, causing all the oil to leak out. As a result, engines from these cars are often found seized at auctions, and they often come with seized camshafts in the cylinder heads, which is a common problem. In this case, the intake camshaft was seized, which I believe happened right at the auction, and that's why they discarded the keys when they tested it as run and drive. So it arrived here without keys, and it was only after we had done all the work and programmed the keys that we realized something was wrong with the engine. In this case, the camshaft and the cylinder head were restored. Additionally, we have another client's M3, also from the USA, which also had a seized intake camshaft. However, he found an engine for about $5,000 and was lucky enough to replace it quickly. The remaining parts are with us, and we might restore them just as the clients did. And good news for M3 owners. If your intake camshaft seizes, it matches the part number from the N55, so you can use a whole one from a salvage yard. However, they also come at a significant cost. Continuing with the hardware, the vanos, valvetronic and chains are all the same as on the N55. There was also a funny case where we were changing the valve cover gasket on the S55, and it turned out to be the same as on the N55, and we had it in stock. Since this engine is similar to the N55, after around 100 to 150,000 kilometers of mileage, it will have leaks from the oil filter housing gasket, the oil pan gasket, the valve cover gasket, and the front and rear crankshaft seals. So, we are done with the engine hardware. Let's move on to the accessory components. We'll start with the fuel supply system. Here, the scheme used is similar to the N55. There is a fuel pump in the tank, a high pressure pump on the engine, and a rail with injectors, but there are some differences. In the N55, there is one fuel pump, while here, on the S55, there are two fuel pumps on the shaft, supplying pressure to one rail. This fuel system is designed to support more horsepower. The injectors in the S55 have not changed. It still uses the same direct injection system, and the injectors are interchangeable with those of the N55. Let's move on to the ignition system, where there are even fewer changes than in the fuel system. Regarding the coils, they are the same as those on the N55 and any N-series engines, meaning they can fail at around 100,000 kilometers, and we always have them in stock. Spark plugs. The spark plugs are specially made for the M-series with specific part numbers. It is sometimes recommended to use S55 spark plugs in tuned N55 engines. So, let's move on to the air supply system, where we have more differences compared to the N55. Since this engine uses two turbochargers, not just one as in the N55, there are two air supply paths for each turbocharger. There are two air filters, one for each turbocharger, two mass airflow sensors, two pipes, each leading to its respective turbocharger. On this engine, at stage 2, with upgraded intercoolers and downpipes, you can achieve around 550 horsepower on these turbos. The turbos also have differences from the N55. In the N55, a vacuum boost controller was used until 2013, and after 2013, an electronic wastegate was used. Here, two electronic wastegates are used. An electronic actuator directly operates the wastegate lever on each turbo. After the turbochargers, the air flows from each turbo through a plastic pipe to a liquid-cooled intercooler. This is another significant difference compared to the N55. In the N55, the air goes through an intercooler before reaching the intake. Here the intercooler is on top and is liquid-cooled, meaning it has a separate cooling radiator. Following the intercooler, the air proceeds towards the intake manifold. This intercooler system, which is liquid-cooled, effectively manages the air's heat and minimizes the volume of the intake air path. This results in a sharper response to the gas pedal. In the intake system, there might be issues after 100,000 kilometers of mileage. This concerns the crankcase ventilation valve. It is the same as in the N55, and it will also likely fail after 100,000 kilometers. By the way, on the N55, in the F30 and F22 bodies, which are the 335i and 235i models, plastic pipes are used for the intake and from the turbocharger. These are prone to deterioration. They dry out and often crack and fall off, especially under boost. A big explosion can occur, the boost air escapes, and the pipe is torn. It is recommended to replace them with tuned aluminum pipes, which are available as a kit. The air supply system on the S55 is less susceptible to damage compared to the N55. Moreover, the rubber seals of the valve cover may develop leaks in the air supply system after around 100,000 kilometers, making it advisable to replace them. The plastic pipes of the crankcase ventilation system may also encounter issues and may require replacement after 100,000 kilometers. Now let's move on to the cooling system. Here the S55 resembles the B58 more than the N55. Unlike the N55, it does not use an electric pump. Instead, it has a mechanical one mounted on the block. This prevents sudden pump failure and unexpected engine overheating. Also, like in the B58, there are two additional pumps. One circulates coolant to cool the turbochargers when the engine is off, as the mechanical pump cannot operate when the engine is stopped. The second pump circulates coolant in the intercooler cooling system, as this engine uses a liquid-cooled intercooler. In the N55, there are no electric pumps for these systems because it has only one electric pump that cools both the turbochargers and the engine. We have a good example here, a salvage car from the USA that is currently disassembled and awaiting bodywork, with the bumper and bumper reinforcement removed, so the cooling system radiators are clearly visible. There are quite a few more compared to the N55. Here is the secret to how the engine can run for a long time on the track without overheating. So, there is the main engine cooling radiator, and a small additional one in the left fender liner. For the intercooler cooling system, there is a main radiator, a large one next to the main radiator, and a smaller additional one in the right fender liner. There are also two oil cooling radiators, one for engine cooling and the other for gearbox oil cooling. In wrecked cars, the lower two oil cooling radiators for the gearbox and engine often get damaged. In this case, 3 radiators were damaged, so we ordered 3 new ones. These are one intercooler cooling radiator and the 2 lower oil cooling radiators for the gearbox and engine. Moving on to the engine accessories. There is nothing special to say about the compressor, air conditioner, and alternator. I think they are the same as in the N55. Regarding the rollers and belts, there are 2 belts here, while the N55 has 1, with several rollers. It is recommended to replace the belt and roller every 100,000 kilometers, as usual. There is no power steering pump because an electric steering rack is used. Steering racks are another topic. It is also worth mentioning the cooling system. 2 tanks are used for the 2 circuits, one for the main engine cooling and the another one for the liquid intercooler cooling system. So what do we have? Although it is stated that 75% of the parts here are the same as in the N55, when you look at the exterior and the part numbers, the parts that break and need replacement are not the same as in the N55. In conclusion, what do we see in this review? BMW has built much more potential for power endurance into the S55, so if it is set to stock at 430 horsepower, it will last a long time, and possibly be more durable than the N55. But of course, it should be noted that it is not used in the same conditions as stock N55s, which drive around the city. The S55 is constantly pushed to higher speeds and loads, and it consistently withstands much higher revolutions per minute and stresses. The use of a closed deck block, additional cooling, and turbochargers with a combined power greater than in the N55 allows this engine to withstand greater loads, endure longer stress, race on the track without overheating, and be more reliable in the future. An interesting point for those who watched our previous review of the B58. It becomes clear where BMW got all the technologies used in the latest BMW engines of the B58 series. They were tested as early as 2013 on the S55 engines of the M series models and have been applied and are still being used in the B58 series. So, if you are interested in BMW technologies, as well as maintenance and shipping cars from the USA, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We also have an Instagram where we post daily videos about client cars and crazy situations. So, subscribe there, like our videos, and we are getting back to work.